Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha. Practical Vedanta of Swami Vivekananda. Today's lecture is titled The Sages of India. In speaking of the sages of India, my mind goes back to those periods of history which have no records, and tradition tries in vain to bring the secrets out of the gloom of the past. The sages of India have been almost innumerable. For what has the Hindu nation been doing for thousands of years except producing sages? I will take, therefore, the lives of a few of the most brilliant ones, the epoch makers, and present them before you, that is to say, my study of them. In the first place, we have to understand a little about our scriptures. Two ideals of truth are in our scriptures. The one is what we call the eternal, and the other is not so authoritative, yet binding under particular circumstances, times and places. The eternal relations which deal with the nature of the soul and of God, and the relations between souls and God are embodied in what we call the Shrutis, the Vedas. The next set of truths is what we call the Smritis, as embodied in the words of Manu, Yajnavalkya and other writers, and also in the Puranas down to the Tantras. The second class of books and teachings is subordinate to the Shrutis in as much as whenever any one of these contradicts anything in the Shrutis must prevail. This is the law. The idea is that the framework of the destiny and goal of man has been all delineated in the Vedas. The details have been left to be worked out in the Smritis and Puranas. As for general directions, the Shrutis are enough for spiritual life. Nothing more can be said, nothing more can be known. All that is necessary has been known. All the advice that is necessary to lead the soul to perfection has been completed in the Shrutis. The details alone were left out, and these the Smritis have supplied from time to time. Another peculiarity is that these Shrutis have many sages as the recorders of the truths in them, mostly men, even some women. Very little is known of their personalities, the dates of their birth, and so forth, but their best thoughts, their best discoveries, I should say, are preserved there, embodied in the sacred literature of our country, the Vedas. In the Smritis, on the other hand, personalities are more in evidence. Startling, gigantic, impressive, world-moving persons stand before us, as it were, for the first time, sometimes of more magnitude even than their teachings. This is a peculiarity which we have to understand, that our religion preaches an impersonal personal God. An impersonal personal God. It preaches any amount of impersonal laws plus any amount of personality. But the very fountainhead of our religion is in the Shrutis, the Vedas, which are perfectly impersonal. The persons all come in the Smritis and Puranas, the great avatars, incarnations of God, prophets, and so forth. And this ought also to be observed, that except our religion, every other religion in the world depends upon the life or lives of some personal founder or founders. Christianity is built upon the life of Jesus Christ, Mohammedanism upon Muhammad, Buddhism upon Buddha, Jainism upon the Jinas, and so on. It naturally follows that there must be in all these religions a good deal of fight about what they call the historical evidences of these great personalities. If at any time the historical evidences about the existence of these personages in ancient times become weak, the whole building of the religion tumbles down and is broken to pieces. We escape this fate because our religion is not based upon persons but on principles. That you obey your religion is not because it came through the authority of a sage. No, not even of an incarnation. Krishna is not the authority of the Vedas, but the Vedas are the authority of Krishna himself. Repeat. Krishna is not the authority of the Vedas, but the Vedas are the authority of Krishna himself. His glory is that he is the greatest preacher of the Vedas that ever existed. So with the other incarnations, so with all our sages, our first principle is that all that is necessary for the perfection of mind and for attaining unto freedom is there in the Vedas. You cannot find anything new. You cannot go beyond a perfect unity, which is the goal of all knowledge. This has been already reached there, and it is impossible to go beyond the unity. Religious knowledge became complete when Tattvam Asi, thou art that, was discovered, and that was in the Vedas. What remained was the guidance of people from time to time, according to different times and places, according to different circumstances and environments. People had to be guided along the old path, and for this, these great teachers came, these great sages. Nothing can bear out more clearly this position than the celebrated saying of Sri Krishna in the Gita. Whenever virtue subsides and irreligion prevails, I create myself for the protection of the good, for the destruction of all immorality. I am coming from time to time. This is the idea of India, which in Sanskrit goes like this in Bhagavad Gita. Yada yada hi dharmasya ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम् परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां विनाशाय च दुष्कृताम्. What follows? That on the one hand there are these eternal principles which stand upon their own foundations without depending on any reasoning event, much less on the authority of sages, however great, of incarnations, however brilliant they may have been. We may remark that as this is the unique position in India, our claim is that the Vedanta only can be the universal religion, that it is already the existing universal religion in the world because it teaches principles and not persons. Let me repeat this, it's so profound. Our claim is that the Vedanta only can be the universal religion, that it is already the existing universal religion in the world because it teaches principles and not persons. No religion built upon a person can be taken up as a type by all the races of mankind. In our own country, we find that there have been so many grand characters. In even a small city, many persons are taken up as types by the different minds in that one city. How is it possible that one person, as Muhammad or Buddha or Christ, can be taken up as the one type for the whole world? Nay, that the whole of morality, ethics, spirituality, and religion can be true only from the sanction of that one person and one person alone? How is it possible? Now, the Vedantic religion doesn't require any such personal authority. Its sanction is the eternal nature of man. Its ethics are based upon the eternal spiritual solidarity of man, already existing, already attained, and not to be attained. On the other hand, from the very earliest times, our sages have been feeling conscious of this fact that the vast majority of mankind require a personality. They must have a personal God in some form or the other. The very Buddha who declared against the existence of a personal God had not died 50 years before his disciples manufactured a personal God out of him. We see everywhere in the world temples of Buddha. Buddha stood against personal God, and Buddha has become one of the greatest personal gods. This is the irony of the religions. Rather tragic, I would say. Hypocrisy of the mankind, human race. The personal God is necessary, and at the same time, we know that instead of and better than vain imaginations of a personal God, which in 99 cases out of 100 are unworthy of human worship. Listen this line carefully, it's very important. The personal God is necessary, and at the same time we know that instead of and better than vain imaginations of a personal God, which in 99 cases out of 100 are unworthy of human worship, we have in this world living and walking in our midst living gods now and then. These are more worthy of worship than any imaginary gods. The living gods means the self-realized masters, the enlightened ones, the sages and seers. Swamiji is referring to, they are far better object of worship or reverence than any imaginary god or incarnation or prophet of the hoary past. That is what Swami Vivekananda is pointing out. These are more worthy of worship than any imaginary god, any creation of our imagination, that is to say, any idea of God which we can form. Sri Krishna is much greater than any idea of God you or I can have. Buddha is a much higher idea, a more living and idealized idea than the ideal you or I can conceive of in our minds. And therefore, it is that they always command the worship of mankind, even to the exclusion of all imaginary deities. This our sages knew, and therefore left it open to all Indian people to worship such great personages, such incarnations. Nay, the greatest of these incarnations goes further. Wherever an extraordinary spiritual power is manifested by external man, know that I am there. It is from me that manifestation comes. These are the words of Lord Krishna. That leaves the door open for the Hindus to worship the incarnations of all the countries in the world. The Hindu can worship any sage and any saint from any country whatsoever, and as a fact, we know that we go and worship many times in the churches of the Christians and many times in the Mohammedan mosques, and that is good. Why not? Ours, as I have said, is the universal religion. It is inclusive enough, it is broad enough to include all the ideals of religion that already exist in the world can be immediately included, and we can patiently wait for all the ideals that are to come in the future to be taken in the same fashion, embraced in the infinite arms of the religion of the Vedanta. This, more or less, is our position with regard to the great sages, the incarnations of God. There are also secondary characters. We find the word Rishi again and again mentioned in the Vedas, and it has become a common word at the present time. The Rishi is the great authority. We have to understand that idea. The definition is that the Rishi is the mantra drashta, the seer of thought. The seer of thought is a Rishi, mantra drashta. What is the proof of religion? This was asked in very ancient times. There is no proof in the senses, was the declaration. Repeats. There was no proof in the senses, was the declaration of the Upanishads and Vedanta and the ancient sages. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasa saha. From whence words reflect back with thought without reaching the goal. Na tatra chakshur gacchati na vagacchati no manaha. There the eyes cannot reach, neither can speech nor the mind. There, that is realm of the self, realm of this transcendent supreme truth. In the realm of the Brahman, the senses, the mind, the eyes, ears, none can dare peep into that empire of the self, the supreme truth that was declared by the ancient sages of Upanishads. That has been the declaration for ages and ages in ancient India. Nature outside cannot give us any answer as to the existence of the soul, the existence of God, the eternal life, the goal of man, and all that. This mind is continually changing, always in a state of flux. It is finite, it is broken into pieces. How can nature tell of the infinite, the unchangeable, the unbroken, the indivisible, the eternal? It never can. And whenever mankind has striven to get an answer from dull dead matter, history shows how disastrous the results have been. How comes then the knowledge which the Vedas declare? It comes through being a rishi. The knowledge of the Brahman and supreme truth comes by becoming a rishi, that is mantra drashta, the seer of the thoughts. This knowledge is not in the senses, but are the senses the be all and the end all of the human being? Who dare say that the senses are the all in all of man? Even in our lives, in the life of every one of us here, there come moments of calmness, perhaps when we see before us the death of one we loved, when some shock comes to us, or when extreme blessedness comes to us. Many other occasions there are when the mind, as it were, becomes calm, feels for the moment its real nature and a glimpse of the infinite beyond, where words cannot reach nor the mind go, is revealed to us. This happens in ordinary life, but it has to be heightened, practiced, perfected. Men found out ages ago that the soul is not bound or limited by the senses, no, not even by the consciousness. The soul is not bound even by consciousness. We have to understand that this consciousness is only the name of one link in the infinite chain. being is not identical with consciousness, but consciousness is only one part of being. Consciousness is only one part of being. Beyond consciousness is where the bold search. Consciousness is bound by the senses. Beyond that, beyond the senses, man must go in order to arrive at truths. And there are even now persons who succeed in going beyond the bounds of the senses. These are called rishis because they come face to face with spiritual truths, truths eternal, truths transcendent. The proof, therefore, of the Vedas is just the same as the proof of this table before me. Pratyaksha, direct perception. This I see with the senses, and the truths of spirituality we also see in a superconscious state of the human soul. Superconscious state alone is known as Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Jnana Samadhi, Sahaj Samadhi. In that state, we know the supreme truth face to face, direct vision, direct intimate experience of the supreme truth is revealed. This rishi state is not limited by time or place, by sex or race. Vatsyayan boldly declares that this rishihood is the common property of the descendants of the sage, of the Aryan, of the non-Aryan, of even the Mleksha. So radical a declaration by Vatsyayan. Every human being is entitled to that supreme truth. Everyone, irrespective of caste, creed, faith, country, culture, he, she belongs to. That was declared in ancient times, not modern times. A radical modern democracy. No, ancient declaration of sages like Vatsyayan that truth is the entitlement and birthright of every human being. Whosoever aspires and seeks that truth, he or she is going to get it. He or she is sure to realize that supreme truth and become that supreme reality, the Brahman. This is the sageship of the Vedas. You see, Malekshas are the demons. And even those demons, because in essence there is nothing demonical or devilish, it is the temporary, momentary, bad karmas, bad actions, thoughts and belief make us, each one of us in some sense, a Maleksha, a devilish character. But essentially everything is divine, everyone is divinity incarnate. The need is to manifest it. Therefore, the ancient sage Vatsyayan so boldly declares no restriction on any caste, any creed, any sex. Every human being is entitled to that realization of the Brahman, the Brahmanhood, the truth realization, the God realization, and everybody's rights, birthright. There can't be a more bold declaration, more profound and positive declaration in the annals of human history, at least the spiritual history of the mankind. This is the sageship of the Vedas, and constantly we ought to remember this ideal of religion in India, which I wish other nations of the world would also remember and learn, so that there may be less fight and less quarrel. Religion is not in books, nor in theories, nor in dogmas, nor in talking, not even in reasoning. It is being and becoming. Religion is in being and becoming. Ah, my friends, until each one of us has become a rishi and come face to face with spiritual facts, religious life has not begun for you unless you yourself have come face to face with the spiritual truths and revelations. The true religious life has not yet begun for you just by reading the sacred scriptures of any kind of howsoever sacred that literature, either Vedas or Quran or Bible or Dhampat, howsoever grand that sacred literature, the sacred scripture may be, but the truth is not hidden there. They are pointers to that supreme truth, and unless and until you, I, and any one of you, unless we see those spiritual truths, that transcendent truths, eternal truths, by our own intuitive personal experience, direct experience, the religious life hasn't begun in true sense of the term. By going to churches, temples, and mosques and pursuing the symbolic rituals, it's nothing bad, but what Swamiji is declaring, the life is spiritual in true sense hasn't become unless and until in your intuitive, personal, immediate experience you have known that transcendent truth for yourself. Direct vision, pratyakshanubhuti, aparakshanubhuti is the only proof, and the sages, by being mantra dashta, the seer of thoughts, saw that truth, saw that eternity, saw their supreme Brahman within themselves, by themselves, for themselves, and not through the books or through the teacher or preacher or howsoever glorious a guru might be, unless and until you have your own direct personal experience of that truth. The life is spiritual has not yet begun. The true, in true sense, the religion hasn't begun. That is what Swami Vivekananda is trying to point out in no uncertain terms. You are talking second hand, third hand. And here applies that beautiful saying of Buddha when he had a discussion with some Brahmins. They came discussing about the nature of Brahman, and the great sage asked, "Have you seen Brahman?" "No," said the Brahmin. "Have you seen Brahman?" "No," said the Brahmin. "Or your father?" "No, neither has he." "Or your grandfather?" "I don't think even he saw him." "My friend," said Buddha, "my friend, how can you discuss about a person whom your father and grandfather never saw and try to put each other down?" That is what the whole world is doing. Let us, this teaching of Buddha is so profound, what he is trying to suggest, that just mere learning in the Vedas or Upanishads or Quran or Bible or any sacred literature, you don't know the reality unless and until you, for yourself, in your own direct experience, you have experienced that truth. You are not a knower of the truth, therefore the life spiritual is so bogus for you. It's a fake spirituality. Buddha further says, "My friend, how can you discuss about a person whom your father and grandfather never saw and try to put each other down? That is what the whole world is doing. Let us say in the language of the Vedanta, This Atman is not to be reached by too much talk, not even by the highest intellect. No, not even by the study of the Vedas themselves. This Atman, the Brahman, the Supreme Truth, can't be understood even by the study of the Vedas and Upanishads. They are an initial pointer. They are very important pointers, but they are not synonym to the truth. They are not Brahman, the living truth, as sometimes we mistake. The living truth is within you. The greatest contribution of the Vedas is that they declare, the bold sages in the Vedas declare that I am not the truth. The Vedas say, I am not the truth. The truth is within you, not within me. That is why Vedas are so profound. There is no spiritual literature or religious sacred textbook or canonical text, nowhere in Bible or Quran or even in Dhampad is this declaration that the truth is not within me, the truth is within you. There can't be more radical than this. That is why Vedas are eternal principles, transcendent reality, pointers towards that. The super science. Let us speak to all the nations of the world in the language of the Vedas. When are your fights and your quarrels? Have you seen God whom you want to preach? If you have not seen, vain is your preaching. You don't know what you say. And if you have seen God, you will not quarrel. Your very face will shine. An ancient sage of the Upanishads sent his son out to learn about Brahman, and the child came back, and the father asked, "What have you learned?" The child replied, he had learned so many sciences. The father said, "That is nothing. Go back to the Guru." And the son went back, and when he returned again, the father asked the same question, and the same answer came from the child. This is the story of the Chandogya Upanishad, the story of Shvetaketu and his father. It's a great story of Chandogya Upanishad that Swami Vivekananda is quoting and referring here. And the son went back, and when he returned again, the father asked the same question, and the same answer came from the child. Once more he had to go back, and the next time he came, his whole face was shining, and his father stood up and declared, "Ah, today, my child, your face shines like a knower of Brahman." The Brahman realization, God realization, shines through your face, shines through every word, thought, every pore of your body and senses would radiate that truth, because you are soaked. You are soaked in direct, immediate experience of that blissful reality, the infinite ocean of unconditional love, bliss, and beauty. You are soaked in. You don't need any proof. You are the proof. You become the proof. A self-realized master or self-realized soul is the proof, the living proof. No other scripture is required to testify to his or her Brahmanhood, his life, his existence, his body, mind, senses. Everything will radiate with that supreme truth. When you have known God, your very face will be changed, your voice will be changed, your whole appearance will be changed. You will be a blessing to mankind. None will be able to resist the Rishi. This is the Rishihood, the ideal in our religion. The rest, all these talks and reasonings and philosophies and dualisms and monisms and even the Vedas themselves are but preparations, secondary things. The other is primary. The Vedas, grammar, astronomy, etc., all these are secondary. That is supreme knowledge which makes us realize the unchangeable that was revealed in the Chandogya Upanishad to the child Shvetaketu. That is supreme knowledge, real knowledge, which makes us realize the unchangeable one, the infinite one, the Brahman, the Supreme Self. The knowledge of Supreme Self, intuitive, personal, immediate, direct knowledge of the Self alone is the real knowledge. The rest is imagination, or at best, a help and aid to that supreme knowledge. Those who realize are the sages from we find in the Vedas, and we understand how this Rishi is the name of a type, of a class, which every one of us as true Hindus is expected to become at some period of our life, and becoming which to the Hindu means salvation. What Swamiji is trying to suggest is that the Rishi means, and anyone and everyone can become and attain Rishihood. Anyone who has realized the Self, anyone who has realized the Brahman, the Supreme Truth, through aparakchanabhuti, direct experience of that truth, what qualifies you as a Rishi, cutting across time, climb, race. Though Swamiji is referring to Hindus here and addressing Hindus, but I would tell you, and Swamiji would concur with me, the Vedas would concur with me, anyone who is a self-realized one, the one who has realized the ultimate reality, is a Rishi, whether a man, woman, child, old, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, or even I would say even an atheist or agnostic. It doesn't matter. These are the words only. The one who has realized the truth, he and she alone is the real Rishi. So Rishi is a word for a class of people who are the knower of truth, knower not by scripture, not through the mantras of Veda, but by themselves in their intuitive, personal, direct, immediate experience. They have known and seen that supreme reality, the Brahman. Therefore, they are Rishis. That is the definition of the Rishi. No belief in doctrines, not going to thousands of temples, nor bathing in all the rivers, the sacred rivers in the world, but becoming the Rishi, the mantra drashta, the seer of thought. That is freedom, that is salvation, that is moksha, that is Brahmanhood, that is self-realization, that alone is known as enlightenment, that is the supreme glory, that is the ultimate attainment of a human being that is possible. Coming down to later times, there have been great world-moving sages, great incarnations, of whom there have been many. And according to the Bhagavat, they also are they also are infinite in number, and those that are worshipped most in India are Rama and Krishna. Rama, the ancient ideal of the heroic ages, the embodiment of truth, of morality, the ideal son, the ideal husband, the ideal father, and above all, the ideal king. This Rama has been presented before us by the great sage Valmiki. No language can be purer, none chaster, none more beautiful, and at the same time simpler than the language in which the great poet has depicted the life of Rama. And what to speak of Sita? You may exhaust the literature of the world that is past, and I may assure you that you will have to exhaust the literature of the world of the future before finding another Sita. Sita is embodiment of ideal womanhood. Ideal womanhood, that is why she is worshipped. Sita is unique. That character was depicted once and for all. There may have been several Ramas, perhaps, but never more than one Sita. What a remarkable, profound declaration by Swamiji. She is the very type of the true Indian woman, for all the Indian ideals of a perfected woman have grown out of that one life of Sita, and here she stands these thousands of years, commanding the worship of every man, woman, and child throughout the length and breadth of the land of Aryavarta, that is India. There she will always be, this glorious Sita, purer than purity itself, all patience and all suffering. She who suffered that life of suffering without a murmur, she the ever chaste and ever purer wife, she the ideal of the people, the ideal of the gods, the great Sita, our national god, she must always remain. So bold, the feminists, the modern feminists would dare to declare a much more bolder ideal about the feminist right, or a feminist icon being declared such a goddess or god as Swami Vivekananda is declaring and saying about Sita. Let me repeat this line. Sita, she the ideal of the people, the ideal of the gods, the great Sita, our national god, she must always remain. Swami Vivekananda is declaring Sita, Mother Sita, as the national god of the Hindus, national god of India. She must remain the national god. Higher than Rama. There could be many Ramas, but only one Sita. Higher than Krishna, there could be many Krishnas in the sense that incarnations, but Sita was only one, the ideal, eternal ideal of womanhood, purer than the purity itself. And every one of us knows her too well to require much delineation. All our mythology may vanish, even our Vedas may depart, and our Sanskrit language may vanish forever, but so long as there will be 5 Hindus living here, even if only speaking the most vulgar patois, there will be the story of Sita present. Wow. Mark my words, Sita has gone into the very vitals of our race. She is there in the blood of every Hindu, man and woman, we are all children of Sita. Every single Hindu is son of Mother Sita. She is our common motherhood. She is our common mother, eternal mother. We are all children of Sita. Any attempt to modernize our women, if it tries to take our women away from that ideal of Sita, is immediately a failure, as we see every day. The women of India must grow and develop in the footprints of Sita, and that is the only way. The next is he who is worshipped in various forms, the favorite ideal of men as well as the women, the ideal of children as well as of grown up men. I mean, he whom the writer of the Bhagavat was not content to call an incarnation but says, the other incarnations were but parts of the Lord. Krishna was the Lord Himself. In Bhagavad, Lord Krishna is declared and believed as the only true incarnation. The rest of the incarnations are part of Him. And it is not strange that such adjectives are applied to Him when we marvel at the many-sidedness of His character. He was the most wonderful sannyasin. Krishna. Krishna was the most wonderful sannyasi and the most wonderful householder in one. That's unparalleled in human history. As Swami Vivekananda is depicting the character of Lord Krishna, brilliant. Krishna was the most wonderful sannyasi and the most wonderful householder in one at the same time. He had the most wonderful amount of rajas power and was at the same time living in the midst of the most wonderful renunciation. Krishna can never be understood until you have studied the Gita, for he was the embodiment of his own teaching. Every one of these incarnations came as a living illustration of what they came to preach. Krishna, the preacher of the Gita, was all his life the embodiment of that song celestial, the Gita. He was the great illustration of non-attachment. He gives up his throne and never cares for it. He, the leader of India, at whose word kings come down from their thrones, never wants to be a king. He, the simple Krishna, ever the same Krishna who played with the gopis. Ah, that most marvelous passage of his life, the most difficult to understand and which none ought to attempt to understand until he has become perfectly chaste and pure. That most marvelous expansion of love, allegorized and expressed in that beautiful play at Vrindavan, which none can understand but he who has become mad with love, love divine, drunk deep of the cup of love. Who can understand the throes of the love of the gopis, the very ideal of love, love that wants nothing, love that even doesn't care for heaven, love that doesn't care for anything in this world or the world to come. And here, my friends, through this love of the gopis has been found the only solution of the conflict between the personal and the impersonal gods. We know how the personal God is the highest point of human life. We know that it is philosophical to believe in an impersonal God, immanent in the universe, of whom everything is but a manifestation. At the same time, our souls hanker after something concrete, something which we want to grasp, at whose feet we can pour out our soul, and so on. The personal God is therefore the highest conception of human nature. Yet, religion stands aghast at such an idea. It is the same old question which you find discussed in the Brahma Sutras, which you find Draupadi discussing with Yudhishthira in the forest. If there is a personal God, all merciful, all powerful, why is the hell of an earth here, and why did he create this hell called earth? He must be a partial God. There was no solution, and the only solution that can be found is what you read about the love of the gopis. They hated every adjective that was applied to Krishna. They did not care to know that he was a Lord of creation. They didn't care to know that he was almighty. They didn't care to know that he was omnipotent, and so forth. The only thing they understood was that he was infinite love, embodiment of infinite love. That was all for the gopis. The gopis understood Krishna only as the Krishna of Vrindavan. He, the leader of the hosts, the king of kings, to them was the shepherd, and the shepherd forever. For the gopis, Krishna was the shepherd and shepherd forever. I don't want wealth, nor many people, nor do I want learning. No, not even do I want to go to heaven. Let me be born again and again. But Lord, grant me this, that I may have love for Thee. Grant me this, that I may have love for Thee. And that for love's sake. A great landmark in the history of religion is here. The ideal of love for the love's sake, work for work's sake, duty for duty's sake. And it is for the first time fell from the lips of the greatest of incarnations, Krishna, and for the first time in the history of humanity upon the soil of India. The religions of fear and of temptations were gone forever, and in spite of the fear of hell and temptation of enjoyment in heaven, came the grandest of ideals, love for love's sake. Love for love's sake, duty for duty's sake, work for work's sake. And what a love! I have told you just now that it is very difficult to understand the love of the gopis. There are not wanting fools, even in the midst of us, who cannot understand the marvelous significance of that most marvelous of all episodes. There are, let me repeat, impure fools, even born of our blood, who try to shrink from that as if from something impure. To them, I have only to say, first make yourselves pure. And you must remember that he who tells the history of the love of the gopis is none else but Shukadeva, the Paramahansa Sukadeva, the embodiment of self-realization, the embodiment of Brahmanhood, the embodiment of the supreme knowledge was Shukadeva, and he is teaching and preaching the knowledge of Krishna, the character of Krishna, and the divine love of the gopis towards Krishna in Bhagavatam, not the sensuous, lecherous ones who are doing in present times and every time they might have done, projecting that love between gopis and Krishna in sensuous, amorous, lecherous perspective. No, the most sacred embodiment of non-attachment, the one who is enjoying the bliss of Brahmanhood, that Shukadeva is narrating that story of the divine love of gopis for Krishna, the shepherd, the child Krishna of Vrindavan. Remember this point. The historian who records this marvelous love of the gopis is one who was born pure, the eternally pure Shuka, the son of Vedvyasa. Immediately after his birth, the story goes that Shukadeva ran out towards jungle. He was so pure, the impurity couldn't touch him. And that Shukadeva is narrating the story of Lord Krishna and the love of gopis. Remember this in your mind. Shuka, the son of Vyasa. So long as there is selfishness in the heart, so long is love of God impossible. Remember this line. Every moment it applies to every religion, every seeker or follower of every faith across the time and clime, that so long as there is selfishness in the heart, so long love of God is impossible. It is nothing but shopkeeping. Shopkeeping we are doing, most of us, in the name of religion. We have opened shops and we are selling the love of the gods. Worse than shopkeepers, at least the shopkeepers are not so dishonest, but in the name of religion, and it applies to all of the religions without exception, that with our selfish and vested interests and selfish desires, we are promoting, projecting those dimensions, and in those way whereby we can get a richer, become financially more well off. That is happening in Kali Yuga. Love not for the love's sake, love as a pretense, love as a means for furtherance of the ephemeral wealth and glory. That applies, I dare say, most of the preachers who claim that they are sitting and preaching Bhagavatam from Vyasa Gaddi, the throne of Vyasa. You should examine. Better you examine their personal life, their purity, what character they do have. They are preaching the truth that was revealed by Shukadeva, the most sacred and purest of the Paramahansas and sages, and they call themselves the inheritors, and they are the ones who are playing the role of the most amorous, most sensuous, the most attached ones, the most selfish ones, the most narcissistic ones are preaching Bhagavatam, depicting the love between gopis and Krishna. It is bound to be impure, it is bound to be foul, it is bound to create impurity within your heart. And that is what is happening today everywhere. I give you something, O Lord, you give me something in return. That is shopkeeping, that is trade, that is what an ordinary human being who is transactional in every word, thought, and action. I am giving you this, you give me this. And this is the greatest tragedy of the humanity. In most of the religions and most of the followers of the religions, the God has only instrumental value. The God, I declare, I personally, for last 20, 30 years, a keen observer of religion, religiosity, and religious practices, I feel most of the human brains I have tried to study, especially after I became a sannyasi, that in the depth of your heart, most of the human beings, when they narrate or relate to the God is no more than a commission agent, a personal assistant or personal manager, or somebody could take care of his her personal problems. I give this worship, I give this prasadam, fruit or sweetmeats, I offer you, I chant your name, and oh Lord, give the boon that my son gets a good job, my husband gets promoted to the position of the secretary to the government of India, my husband's become a millionaire, a billionaire. Oh Lord Krishna, I am chanting your name hundreds times, thousands times. Please give more money to me. I have only 2 houses. Give me a palatial building to me, oh Krishna. Get my daughter married to a handsome, a rich person, oh Krishna, grant me. My husband is suffering from some terminal disease, grant him good health. That is pure nonsense in the name of religion. That is pure bartering of the religion. That is trade, crash commerce, not religion. The religion and religiosity has been defiled, and it applies to all religions today on the planet. We have reduced the religion and worship of the gods and goddesses as joke, cruel, nasty, vulgar joke. That is happening in most of the temples or churches or mosques or other symbols of religiosity. That is a history, a tragic history. That is what Swami Vivekananda is predicting way back 123 years ago. This lecture was given 123 years ago. How prophetic it is. And then that selfish man who is a shopkeeper of religion, again Swamiji says, "O Lord, you give me something in return." And says the Lord, "If you don't do this, I will take good care of you when you die. I will roast you." I will roast you all the rest of your lives perhaps, and so on. See, other side also, it is falsely projected that, oh Lord is saying, you love me, you give me, you worship me, otherwise I will roast you, I will torture you, I will exploit you, I will make you suffer in the hell. No, God can say that. No God, whose name has ever said that. The God and the Lord is ever merciful. But this is the kind of our own mindset due to our selfishness and vested interest that we project a God like this, because we ourselves find that God very useful, very instrumental to further our sensual pleasures, to further our material enjoyments, because everything is meant for this body for us. We are living in body consciousness, and pleasure of the senses is the supreme glory. As so religion and the God too have become just instrument of my sensual pleasure. What a great tragedy. What a joke in the name of religion. If you don't do this, I will take good care of you when you die. I will roast you all the rest of your lives perhaps, and so on. So long as such ideas are in the brain, how can one understand the mad throes of the gopis' love? You can't understand the divine love of gopis with a mindset, a selfish mindset like this, that of a shopkeeper, a trader, a barterer, a transactional character can't understand the divine love of gopis. So long as such ideas are in brain, how can one understand the mad throes of the gopis' love? Oh, for one kiss is those lips. Oh, for one kiss of those lips, one who has been kissed by thee, his thirst for thee increases forever. All sorrows vanish, and he forgets love for everything else but for thee and thee alone. The purest Brahmananda, the bliss of the Brahman alone is what is depicted between the relationship